Welcome back to the English Hour. Today, we have a fantastic topic to dive into how to boost your English skills through everyday conversations. Sophia, excited to get started?
Absolutely, Jacob. Conversation practice is one of the most effective ways to improve fluency and confidence.
Right, many learners struggle with speaking because they don't get enough real-life practice.
That's true. But even casual chats, like ordering food or small talk, can make a big difference.
So, let's break it down. What makes a conversation effective for learning English?
First, active listening is key. Paying close attention helps you understand context and pick up new phrases.
And responding naturally, even if you make mistakes, builds confidence.
Exactly. It's better to speak and learn than to stay silent out of fear.
What about vocabulary? How can learners expand it through conversation?
Try to use new words immediately in sentences. Repetition in context helps retention.
Good point. And asking questions when you don't understand is a great way to learn too.
Yes, it encourages deeper engagement and clarifies meaning.
How important is body language and tone in conversations?
Very important, non-verbal cues can change meaning and show you're engaged.
Plus, mimicking native speakers' intonation makes you sound more natural.
Practicing with videos or podcasts and repeating phrases is a helpful technique.
Let's talk about some practical tips for learners to practice conversation daily.
Speaking with language partners or tutors online can provide regular practice.
Even talking to yourself in English about your day can help.
Yes, narrating actions or thoughts builds fluency and comfort.
Role-playing common situations prepares you for real-life encounters.
Like ordering food, asking for directions, or chatting with coworkers.
What about technology? How can apps or online tools help?
Language exchange apps connect learners with native speakers worldwide.
Voice recognition tools can give immediate feedback on pronunciation.
Video calls simulate face-to-face conversation, improving listening and speaking.
How can learners stay motivated to keep practicing conversation regularly?
Setting small, achievable goals keeps the process rewarding.
Celebrating progress, even small improvements, fuels motivation.
Joining supportive communities reduces loneliness and encourages consistency.
What advice do you have for overcoming anxiety or fear of speaking?
Remember that mistakes are natural and part of learning.
Practicing in low-pressure environments, like with friends or tutors, builds confidence.
Preparing phrases or sentences in advance can ease anxiety.
Breathing exercises and positive self-talk help manage nervousness.
With time and practice, speaking becomes more comfortable and enjoyable.
Let's explore how cultural understanding impacts conversation skills.
Knowing cultural norms and expressions helps avoid misunderstandings.
For example, greetings, politeness levels, and humor vary across cultures.
Immersing yourself in culture through media or conversation improves this awareness.
Can you share examples of common English idioms or slang that learners should know?
Sure, phrases like break the ice, hit the books, or piece of cake are widely used.
Learning idioms makes your speech more natural and relatable.
But it's important to understand the context to avoid confusion.
How do you recommend learners practice these expressions?
Use them in sentences or conversations, and listen for them in movies or podcasts.
Let's discuss the role of feedback in improving conversation skills.
Constructive feedback helps identify strengths and areas for improvement.
Recording yourself and reviewing the recordings is a great self-feedback tool.
Language tutors or conversation partners can offer helpful corrections.
It's important to stay open-minded and not get discouraged by criticism.
Feedback is a stepping stone to progress, not a setback.
What are some common conversation mistakes learners should watch out for?
Overusing filler words, speaking too fast, or translating directly from their native language.
Also, ignoring sentence structure and grammar can cause confusion.
Pausing to think before speaking can improve clarity and confidence.
Finally, how can learners measure their progress in conversation skills?
Tracking how comfortable and spontaneous you feel during conversations.
Noticing improvements in understanding native speakers is a good sign.
Being able to discuss new topics or share opinions shows growth.
And receiving positive feedback from conversation partners or tutors confirms progress.
consistency and reflection are key to ongoing improvement.
That was an amazing discussion, Sophia. I'm sure our listeners have gained valuable insights.
Absolutely, Jacob. Remember, the best way to improve is to keep talking and learning every day.
We'll continue exploring more exciting topics in future episodes, so stay tuned.
Looking forward to it.
Let's dive deeper into some fun and practical exercises that listeners can try to boost their English conversation skills.
One great exercise is the question game, where you ask and answer questions about everyday topics.
That's right, it helps practice forming sentences and keeps the conversation flowing naturally.
You can do this with a partner or even by yourself, thinking of questions and answering out loud.
Another useful method is storytelling. Pick a simple story or event and try to retell it in your own words.
This improves your narrative skills and helps you learn new vocabulary and expressions.
It also challenges you to organize your thoughts in English, which is essential for fluid speaking.
For those who love music, singing along to English songs is both fun and educational.
Absolutely, it improves pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation.
Plus, it exposes you to colloquial language and slang in an enjoyable way.
What about using technology for conversation practice, Sophia?
Language learning apps like Tandem or HelloTalk connect you with native speakers worldwide for chat and voice calls.
Virtual reality environments can simulate real-life situations where you practice speaking.
And don't forget about watching English movies or series with subtitles to pick up natural conversation flow.
Subtitles are great for linking spoken and written language, helping improve both listening and reading.
Switching between English subtitles and no subtitles challenges your comprehension.
Let's talk about conversational fillers like, or, how should learners handle them?
Fillers are natural in speech, but overusing them can distract listeners.
Practicing pausing instead of filling silence helps make speech clearer and more confident.
Recording yourself and noticing filler use is a helpful way to become aware.
Then you can work on replacing fillers with meaningful pauses.
Another technique is to prepare transition phrases like, well, actually, or, let me think, to buy time.
What advice do you have about accent and pronunciation concerns?
Focus on clarity over perfection. The goal is to be understood.
Using phonetic apps or videos to practice difficult sounds is beneficial.
Mimicking native speakers and shadowing their speech helps with natural rhythm and intonation.
It's important to embrace your unique accent as part of your identity.
Exactly, Jacob. Confidence shines through regardless of accent.
Now, let's explore how humor and jokes fit into English conversation.
Humor is a powerful social tool, but can be tricky due to cultural differences.
Simple, light jokes or puns are a good starting point for learners.
Sharing jokes helps build rapport and shows your command of the language's nuances.
Listening to comedians or watching sitcoms exposes you to everyday humor.
And practicing telling jokes with friends builds your conversational confidence.
How about managing misunderstandings or confusion during conversations?
Politely asking for clarification or repeating what you understood can clear things up.
Using phrases like, could you explain that again? Or, I'm not sure I understand, are helpful.
It's important not to feel embarrassed. Everyone encounters misunderstandings.
It's part of the learning process and helps deepen comprehension.
Exactly, Jacob. Being patient and persistent makes all the difference.
Let's discuss the importance of cultural exchange in conversation learning.
Exchanging cultural stories or traditions makes conversations richer and more engaging.
It also broadens your worldview and improves language skills simultaneously.
Sharing your own culture encourages others to open up, creating meaningful connections.
Participating in language exchange meetups or online groups is a great way to experience this.
And it's fun, learning about different cuisines, holidays, or customs keeps you motivated.
As we continue, we'll cover more tips for advancing your English conversation skills step by step.
Stay with us for practical exercises, real-life examples, and expert advice to keep improving every day.
Ready to explore more?
Absolutely, Jacob. One of the next steps in improving conversation is learning to handle difficult or unexpected questions.
Right. Those moments can really test your quick thinking and vocabulary.
A good strategy is to stay calm and give yourself a moment to think before answering.
You can also use phrases like, "That's an interesting question," or "Let me think about that for a second," to buy some time.
And if you don't know the answer, it's perfectly okay to say, "I'm not sure, but I'd love to learn more about that."
Being honest and curious often leads to deeper, more meaningful conversations.
Exactly, Jacob. And sometimes, turning the question back to the other person helps keep the conversation flowing.
That's a great tip. It shows interest and gives you more time to gather your thoughts.
Another important skill is to recognize and respond to emotions in conversation.
Yes, understanding when someone is happy, sad, or frustrated helps you react appropriately.
Phrases like, "That sounds great," or "I'm sorry to hear that," show empathy and connection.
Listening carefully for tone and body language clues is key here.
This emotional awareness makes your conversations feel more natural and heartfelt.
Let's talk about storytelling again. How can learners practice this in a fun way?
Try telling a story about your day, but add a twist or a funny ending.
Or narrate an imaginary adventure, using descriptive language to paint a picture.
This sparks creativity while practicing past tense and vocabulary.
Role playing with a partner where each person builds on the story is also very effective.
It helps practice turn taking and spontaneous language use.
What about practicing conversation in professional settings?
It's important to learn polite expressions and formal vocabulary.
Phrases like, "Could you please," or "I would appreciate if," are essential in business English.
Practicing meetings, presentations, and phone calls boosts confidence.
Watching interviews and business related videos can expose learners to this style.
And don't forget email writing, which also strengthens professional communication skills.
How do you recommend balancing grammar study with conversation practice?
Grammar is the foundation, but it shouldn't stop you from speaking.
Focus on learning key grammar points that improve clarity.
Then use them actively in conversation to reinforce understanding.
Over time, your grammar will improve naturally through use.
Yes, practice makes perfect, especially when combined with feedback.
Speaking of feedback, how can learners make the most of corrections during conversation?
Listen carefully, and don't take corrections personally.
Try to repeat the correct form to reinforce learning,
Ask for explanations if the correction isn't clear.
and keep practicing. The goal is progress, not perfection.
Consistent effort and patience lead to lasting improvement.
Let's explore how reading aloud can support conversation skills.
Reading dialogue from books or scripts helps with pronunciation and intonation.
It also familiarizes you with natural sentence flow and expression.
Recording yourself while reading aloud and comparing it to native speakers is very helpful.
It's a simple but effective way to boost speaking confidence.
Plus, it builds vocabulary and grammar recognition.
How important is it to practice different conversation topics?
Very important. It prepares you for a wide range of situations.
From casual chats to formal discussions, variety builds versatility.
It also keeps learning interesting and prevents boredom.
What are some topics beginners can start with?
Daily routines, hobbies, travel, food, and family are great starters.
For more advanced learners, current events, culture, and technology offer rich content.
Choosing topics that interest you makes practicing more enjoyable.
Let's touch on group conversations versus one-on-one chats.
Group conversations require skills, like interrupting politely and listening to multiple people.
It's useful to practice phrases like, "Can I add something?" or "I agree with that."
One-on-one chats allow deeper connection and more speaking time.
Both settings are valuable for developing different communication skills.
Participating in clubs or discussion groups provides practical experience.
We've covered so much already, Sophia. Any final thoughts on mastering conversation skills?
Keep practicing consistently, stay curious, and don't fear making mistakes.
Remember, every conversation is a chance to learn and grow.
Enjoy the journey, and your English will improve naturally.
Thanks so much for sharing your insights today, Sophia.
My pleasure, Jacob. Can't wait for our next episode.
Before we move on, Sophia, Could you share some tips on how to stay motivated during this long learning process?
Absolutely, Jacob. One of the best ways is to set small, achievable goals. Celebrate each milestone to keep your spirits high.
That's a great point. Sometimes just being able to hold a simple conversation or understand a movie scene feels like a big win.
Exactly. Also, mixing up your learning methods helps. Try watching videos, listening to podcasts, reading books, and speaking with friends.
Variety definitely keeps things fresh and exciting.
Another tip is to remind yourself why you started learning English in the first place, whether it's for travel, work, or personal growth.
Keeping that purpose in mind can push you through challenging days.
And don't be afraid to reward yourself for your hard work. Maybe with a favorite treat or a fun outing.
Self-reward is a fantastic motivator.
Lastly, surround yourself with positive influences, friends, teachers, or online communities who encourage your progress.
Support systems make all the difference.
They do, Jacob. Learning English is a journey best enjoyed with others.
What about handling frustration or plateaus when progress seems slow?
Those moments are normal. Try to take breaks, change your routine, or focus on different skills for a while.
Sometimes stepping back helps you come back stronger and more focused.
And remember, progress isn't always visible day to day. Trust the process.
Wise words? Persistence is key.
Exactly. Celebrate even the small improvements, and keep moving forward.
Thanks for those encouraging tips, Sophia.
Anytime, Jacob. I hope our listeners find them helpful.
All right, let's pause here for today. When you're ready, we'll continue exploring more ways to become fluent English speakers.
Looking forward to it.
Great. So, Sophia, let's dive deeper into some practical activities listeners can do every day to improve their English speaking skills.
Sure thing, Jacob. One activity I always recommend is daily journaling, but instead of writing, speak out loud about your day or your thoughts.
That's interesting. So, like recording yourself talking about what happened.
Exactly. You can use your phone or computer to record a 5-minute diary entry every day.
How does this help with speaking?
It improves fluency because you get used to forming sentences on the spot, and it boosts confidence since you hear your own voice.
Plus, you can listen back and notice areas for improvement, right?
Yes, self-feedback is powerful. You might catch pronunciation mistakes or awkward phrasing.
I guess it also helps with vocabulary recall because you try to describe different events or feelings each day.
That's right. And if you want to add structure, you can follow prompts like, "What made me happy today?" or "A challenge I faced."
Those prompts sound very manageable for beginners.
Definitely, and for more advanced learners, you can talk about current news or your opinions on a book or movie.
What about practicing conversation with others? Any suggestions for people who don't have many native English speaking friends?
Great question. Online language exchange platforms are amazing. You can find partners around the world to chat with.
How do these work?
Usually, you spend half the time speaking in your native language and the other half in English, so both partners benefit.
That sounds very fair and balanced.
It is. Plus, you get exposure to different accents and cultures, which is invaluable.
Do you recommend video calls or just texting?
Video calls are better for speaking practice because you get real-time feedback and can see facial expressions.
True. It makes the conversation feel more natural.
Also, joining English speaking clubs or local meetups can provide in-person practice.
For listeners who don't have access to such groups, what else can they do?
Role-playing alone is a useful technique. Imagine dialogues for different situations, like ordering food or asking for directions.
That helps prepare for real-world encounters.
Exactly. And you can practice common phrases and questions this way.
What about using media like movies and podcasts? How can learners use those effectively?
Watching movies with subtitles in English helps connect spoken words with text.
Should learners watch with subtitles on or off?
I suggest starting with subtitles on to understand the meaning, then gradually watch without them to improve listening skills.
That's a good gradual approach.
Podcasts are great too because they expose you to natural conversation, slang, and various accents.
Do you recommend pausing and repeating parts to practice pronunciation?
Absolutely. Shadowing, or repeating immediately after the speaker, is excellent for improving intonation and rhythm.
I've heard of shadowing. Can you explain how to do it properly?
Sure. Listen to a sentence or phrase, then try to say it aloud right after the speaker, without looking at the transcript.
This mimics the natural flow of speech.
Yes, and over time, it helps you sound more fluent and native, like,
Are there specific types of podcasts or shows you recommend for English learners?
look for podcasts designed for learners, with slower speech and clear pronunciation.
What about more advanced learners?
They can listen to news podcasts, storytelling, or interviews on topics of interest.
That's motivating, especially if it aligns with their hobbies or career goals.
Exactly. Motivation is key to sticking with listening practice.
Speaking of motivation, what role does setting language goals play?
Huge role, clear, specific goals keep learners focused and give them a sense of direction.
Can you give examples of good language goals?
Sure, for example, I want to hold a 10-minute conversation with a native speaker by next month. Or, I want to learn 10 new words every day.
Setting deadlines also helps, right?
Definitely. Deadlines create accountability.
What if someone feels overwhelmed by too many goals?
Start small and build up gradually. It's better to achieve a few goals consistently than to give up on many.
That's practical advice.
And celebrating small wins boosts confidence and enjoyment.
How can learners track their progress effectively?
Keeping a language journal, or using apps that monitor practice time and vocabulary growth helps.
Regular self-assessment is important then.
Yes, and revisiting old materials to see improvement is very encouraging.
Switching gears, Sophia, how can learners improve their English pronunciation?
Listening carefully and practicing tricky sounds is the first step.
Any tips for practicing pronunciation daily?
Tongue twisters are fun and effective for improving clarity.
Can you share a few good tongue twisters for our listeners?
Of course, try. She sells seashells by the seashore. Or, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Those are classics. Repeating them slowly at first, then faster is the way to go.
Exactly. It warms up your mouth muscles and improves articulation.
What about stress and intonation in sentences?
That's very important. Stressing the right words conveys meaning and emotion.
Could you give an example?
Sure, I didn't say he stole the money. Stressing different words changes the meaning.
That's fascinating. It's almost like music.
Yes, English has a rhythm that learners should try to mimic.
How can they practice intonation?
Listening to native speakers and repeating their speech helps. Also, recording yourself and comparing is useful.
Are there online resources you recommend for pronunciation practice?
Websites like Forvo or apps like eAlsa Speak provide guided pronunciation exercises.
Those sound very helpful.
Yes, they give instant feedback, which is essential.
How about the role of body language in communication?
It's huge. Gestures, facial expressions, and posture support your spoken message.
So, practicing in front of a mirror or recording video can help.
Absolutely. It helps you become aware of your non-verbal cues.
And matching your body language to your words makes communication clearer and more engaging.
Exactly, Jacob. Non-verbal signals can express feelings words sometimes cannot.
This is such a rich topic. Should we talk about cultural aspects in conversation next?
Great idea. Understanding cultural norms helps avoid misunderstandings.
For example, what topics are polite or impolite in different cultures?
Yes, in some cultures, asking about family is common, while in others it's too personal.
Knowing this helps learners adapt their conversation style.
Exactly, and it shows respect and awareness.
Are there any general tips for polite conversation?
Using please, thank you, and softening requests with phrases like, would you mind, are good practices.
Also, listening attentively and not interrupting is crucial.
Yes, and asking follow-up questions shows genuine interest.
I think our listeners will find these cultural tips very useful.
Me too, Jacob. Being culturally sensitive is part of becoming a confident speaker.
Sophia, what do you think about learning idioms and slang?
They're essential for sounding natural and understanding informal speech.
How should learners approach idioms?
Start with common ones like break the ice or hit the nail on the head.
Using idioms correctly can really impress native speakers.
Yes, but it's important to understand their meaning and context first.
What about slang?
Slang varies by region and age group, so learners should be cautious and ask native speakers if unsure.
That's smart advice.
Incorporating idioms and slang gradually enriches your language.
This conversation is packed with great tips. I'm sure our listeners are excited to put them into practice.
I hope so. Consistency and curiosity are the keys to success.
Let's plan to explore more specific scenarios and role plays next time.
Looking forward to it, Jacob.
Awesome. Speaking of scenarios, Sophia, what do you think are some of the most useful everyday situations that learners should practice?
Great question, Jacob. I think ordering food at a restaurant, shopping, asking for directions, and making small talk are some of the key situations everyone should master.
Absolutely. Let's start with ordering food. What are some tips to sound natural when ordering?
It's important to be polite and clear. Phrases like, "Could I please have?" or "I would like to order" work really well.
What about asking questions about the menu?
Asking questions like, "What do you recommend?" or "Is this dish spicy?" helps you engage with the server and get useful information.
That's good to know. And what about paying the bill?
You can say, "Could I get the check, please?" or "Can I pay by card?" These are common and polite ways to ask.
Shopping is another important scenario. What should learners focus on there?
Learning vocabulary related to products, sizes, colors, and prices is crucial.
And how about asking for help in a store?
You can say, "Excuse me, could you help me find?" or "Do you have this in a different size?"
That's very practical. Now, asking for directions can be tricky for some.
True, but learning simple questions like, "Where is the nearest subway station?" or "How do I get to the city center?" makes a big difference.
And listening carefully to directions is equally important.
Yes, learners should practice understanding phrases like, "Go straight," "Turn left," or "It's next to."
Small talk is often overlooked but very important socially.
Exactly. Topics like weather, hobbies, or weekend plans are safe and common small talk starters.
What are some good phrases to start a conversation?
Simple ones like, "How's your day going?" or "Did you do anything fun over the weekend?" work well.
And how do you keep the conversation going?
By asking follow-up questions and sharing your own experiences.
That sounds like a great way to build connections.
It is, small talk opens doors to deeper conversations.
What about handling misunderstandings or when you don't understand something?
Don't hesitate to ask, "Could you please repeat that?" or "I'm sorry, I didn't understand."
It's important to stay calm and polite in those moments.
Absolutely. Native speakers usually appreciate when you ask for clarification.
Do you have tips for learners who feel shy or nervous speaking?
Practice is key. Start with speaking to yourself or with close friends, then gradually move to strangers.
What about breathing exercises or relaxation techniques?
Those can help reduce anxiety before speaking.
Good idea. Confidence builds over time.
Yes, and making mistakes is part of the learning process.
Very true. What's your advice on dealing with mistakes?
View them as learning opportunities. And don't be too hard on yourself.
Perfect mindset. Lastly, Sophia, any resources you want to recommend to our listeners?
There are many great apps like Duolingo, Memrise, and HelloTalk. Also, watching TED Talks with subtitles is fantastic.
TED Talks are a treasure trove for vocabulary and ideas.
Yes, and they expose you to different speaking styles and topics.
This has been such an informative discussion, Sophia.
Thank you, Jacob. I hope everyone finds these tips helpful and keeps practicing every day.
Absolutely. Remember, listeners, your journey with English is unique, so enjoy every step.
Keep speaking, listening, and growing. We'll talk again soon.
Since we're on the topic of resources, Sophia, how important do you think watching movies and TV shows is for learning English?
Oh, it's incredibly important. Movies and TV shows expose you to natural language, slang, idioms, and different accents.
Do you recommend watching with or without subtitles?
It depends on your level. Beginners might start with subtitles in their native language, then switch to English subtitles, and eventually watch without any.
That gradual transition makes sense. How about choosing what to watch?
Pick shows or movies you enjoy. If you like comedy, watch comedies. If you're into crime dramas, start there. Interest keeps motivation high.
Are there any specific series or movies you think are good for learners?
Absolutely. Shows like Friends are great, because the language is conversational and the episodes are short. Animated movies often use clear and simple language too.
Friends is a classic. What about listening to music? How does that help?
Music helps with pronunciation, rhythm, and vocabulary. Singing along can make learning fun and improve your accent.
Any tips for learners when they listen to songs?
Start by reading the lyrics, then listen closely. Try to catch new words or phrases and use them in sentences.
That's a nice way to combine fun with study.
Exactly. Also, podcasts are an amazing resource.
Right, there are podcasts on practically every topic imaginable.
Yes, and you can pick topics you're interested in. For example, news podcasts help with formal language, while storytelling podcasts improve listening skills.
How would you suggest using podcasts for language learning?
Listen actively, take notes, repeat sentences aloud, and try to summarize what you heard.
That's a solid strategy. What about reading books? Is it still effective in the digital age?
Definitely, reading builds vocabulary and grammar skills. Start with graded readers' books simplified for learners.
Any genres you recommend?
Stories with dialogue are great. Mystery or adventure books keep you hooked, making reading less of a chore.
How about combining reading and listening?
Audiobooks paired with the text can be powerful. You see the words and hear the pronunciation simultaneously.
Brilliant. What's your take on keeping a language journal?
Writing daily, even short sentences, helps reinforce learning. You can write about your day, thoughts, or new words.
Does journaling improve speaking as well?
Yes, because it strengthens your ability to form sentences, which transfers to spoken fluency.
Great point. Now, what about social media? How can learners use platforms like Twitter or Instagram to improve?
Following English accounts, reading posts, and engaging with comments can expose learners to informal language and current trends.
Do you think it's okay to make mistakes in comments?
Absolutely. Interaction helps build confidence, and native speakers often correct mistakes kindly.
That's encouraging for shy learners.
Social media can also connect learners worldwide, creating a global learning community.
Speaking of communities, language exchange partners are becoming popular.
Yes, speaking regularly with a native speaker who wants to learn your language creates a win-win situation.
What are some tips for finding and maintaining good language exchange relationships?
Be consistent, patient, and respectful. Set clear goals and enjoy the cultural exchange.
Cultural exchange is such a rich part of language learning.
It is. Understanding culture helps with idioms, jokes, and real-life conversations.
What would you say is the biggest myth about learning English?
That you have to be perfect from the start, or that only children can learn languages well.
True. What's your advice to learners who feel discouraged?
Keep going. Progress might be slow, but every step counts.
Persistence beats perfection every time.
Exactly. Celebrate small wins and stay curious.
Thanks, Sophia. I'm sure our listeners will find your advice inspiring.
Thank you, Jacob. I'm excited to hear about everyone's progress.
Sophia, let's dive deeper into motivation. What do you think keeps learners motivated over the long term?
That's a key question, Jacob. Setting clear, achievable goals helps. Also, celebrating milestones, no matter how small, keeps spirits high.
Can you give examples of effective goals?
Sure, for example, mastering 10 new words a day, holding a 5-minute conversation in English, or finishing a book by the end of the month.
Those sound manageable and motivating. How about using rewards?
Rewards are great. Treat yourself when you reach a goal. Maybe a movie night, or a favorite snack.
That makes the journey fun. What about learners who feel they hit a plateau?
Plateaus are normal. It means your brain is consolidating knowledge. Switching up learning methods can reignite progress.
Like trying podcasts if you've only been reading?
Exactly. or joining a conversation club if you mostly study alone.
What's your advice for staying motivated during tough times?
Remember why you started and visualize your success. Surround yourself with positive influences and keep your learning routine flexible.
Speaking of routines, how important is consistency?
Very important. Even 15 minutes daily is better than long sessions once a week.
So it's about habit, not intensity.
Exactly. Small, regular efforts build long-term fluency.
What role does curiosity play in language learning?
Huge role. Being curious about culture, history, and people keeps the learning experience alive.
How can learners cultivate curiosity?
By exploring topics they love in English, asking questions, and being open to new experiences.
That sounds enjoyable rather than stressful.
Yes, learning should be a joyful adventure.
Let's talk about the fear of speaking again. Any new strategies to overcome it?
Practicing mindfulness helps. Focus on the present moment and breathe deeply before speaking.
Interesting. Does role playing help?
Definitely. Simulating real, life situations prepares you and builds confidence.
How about practicing with technology?
Language apps with speaking exercises or AI chatbots are fantastic for low-pressure practice.
Technology really expands possibilities.
Yes, it makes learning accessible anytime, anywhere.
Before we continue, Sophia, what's one thing you wish every learner knew?
That mistakes are proof you're trying and learning. So embrace them without fear.
Such a powerful mindset. Now, how can learners track their progress effectively?
Keeping a learning diary, recording voice memos, or using apps that measure improvement can help.
Do you recommend setting checkpoints?
Yes, like monthly reviews of vocabulary learned or speaking fluency.
That helps maintain focus and motivation.
Exactly. Plus, it shows how far you've come, which is encouraging.
Any tips for balancing language learning with busy schedules?
Integrate learning into daily life, listen to podcasts during commute, read a page before bed, or chat in English online.
Making English part of your routine.
Yes, seamless and enjoyable.
What about learning with friends or family?
It's wonderful. It creates support and accountability.
Plus, it makes learning social and fun.
Definitely. Sharing goals and practicing together boosts motivation.
Lastly, Sophia, where do you see the future of language learning heading?
With AI and virtual reality, immersive and personalized learning will become even more accessible.
Imagine practicing English in virtual cafes or global classrooms.
Exciting times ahead for learners everywhere.
Thank you for sharing your insights, Sophia. This conversation has been so rich and inspiring.
Thank you, Jacob. I'm looking forward to continuing to support learners on their journey.
Sophia, since we talked about AI, how do you feel about AI tools in language learning? Are they really effective?
AI tools are game changers, Jacob. They offer personalized feedback, instant corrections, and can simulate conversations 24/7.
That's true. Sometimes it's hard to find speaking partners, but AI can fill that gap.
Exactly. Plus, AI adapts to your level and style, making learning more efficient.
Any concerns about over-reliance on AI?
It's important not to lose human interaction altogether. AI is a tool, but real conversations with people teach cultural nuances.
So a balance is key.
Absolutely. Use AI to practice but also engage with real speakers.
How do you recommend learners use AI effectively?
Set specific goals for each session, practice pronunciation, vocabulary, or conversation skills. And review your errors carefully.
That makes sense. Switching gears, what role does travel play in language learning?
Immense. Being immersed in a culture forces you to use the language daily, accelerating fluency.
But not everyone can travel easily.
True, but even virtual tours or language meetups with native speakers nearby can simulate immersion.
Good point. How do you prepare for a trip to maximize language practice?
Learn key phrases, cultural etiquette, and try to make local friends.
That sounds like an adventure.
It is, and a huge confidence boost.
What about dealing with frustration when you can't express yourself?
Use gestures, simple words, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Most people appreciate the effort.
That's encouraging advice. Back to learning habits, do you think multitasking helps or hurts language learning?
Focused attention is better. Multitasking might reduce retention.
So it's better to dedicate specific time blocks to learning.
Yes, quality over quantity.
How can learners stay consistent during busy or stressful times?
Adapt your goals, shorter sessions or passive learning, like listening to music.
That keeps momentum going.
Exactly, and prevents burnout.
Let's talk about vocabulary. What's the best way to remember new words?
Spaced repetition is very effective reviewing words at increasing intervals.
Using flashcards or apps like Anki.
Yes, also, using new words in sentences or conversation cements them.
How about idioms and phrasal verbs? They can be tricky.
They are, but learning them in context and through stories helps.
Any fun ways to practice idioms?
Create mini dialogues or find TV shows that use them naturally.
Great idea. Now, what about grammar? Many learners find it intimidating.
Grammar is important, but don't let it paralyze you. Learn the basics and focus on communication.
So, grammar is a tool, not a hurdle.
Exactly. Practice makes perfect over time.
How do you recommend balancing grammar study with speaking practice?
Alternate, study a grammar point, then practice it in conversation or writing.
That integration sounds effective.
It really is. Keeps learning dynamic.
Before we pause, Sophia, what's a quick tip for improving English right now?
Speak more, don't wait to be perfect. Practice every chance you get.
Simple but powerful advice. Thanks so much, Sophia.
My pleasure, Jacob. I'm excited for all our listeners to take these tips and grow their English skills.
Sophia, let's explore some creative ways learners can practice English beyond the traditional methods. What do you suggest?
Great question, Jacob. I always recommend activities like journaling in English, watching movies with subtitles, or even playing video games in English.
Video games, really? How does that help?
Absolutely. Many games have rich stories and dialogues. Playing them helps with vocabulary, slang, and understanding context in a fun way.
That sounds so engaging. Do you think social media can be useful too?
Yes, but it depends on how you use it. Following English speaking influencers, participating in comment sections, or joining English speaking groups can be great practice.
What about podcasts or audiobooks?
They're fantastic for improving listening skills and pronunciation, especially if you listen actively and maybe repeat sentences aloud.
Could you explain active listening a bit?
Sure, it means paying close attention, trying to understand meaning, and sometimes pausing to repeat or write down new words.
How can learners avoid getting overwhelmed with so many options?
Prioritize based on your interests and goals. If you love stories, focus on audiobooks and movies. If you enjoy chatting, join conversation groups.
Personalizing learning makes it enjoyable. Now, what about writing practice?
Writing helps reinforce grammar and vocabulary. Start with short texts like emails, social media posts, or even creative writing like stories or poems.
Any tools to help with writing?
Grammar and spell check tools like Grammarly are helpful. Also, getting feedback from native speakers or tutors is invaluable.
That feedback loop is crucial. Speaking of tutors, how important is having a teacher or mentor?
Very important for structured guidance, motivation, and correcting mistakes you might not notice on your own.
Can learners find affordable options?
Yes, online platforms offer affordable or even free tutoring. Group classes can also be budget-friendly.
How about peer learning?
Peer learning is powerful. Teaching and learning from each other reinforces knowledge.
Any ideas on finding study partners?
Language exchange apps, local meetups, or online forums are great places to connect.
Let's talk about cultural learning. How does culture influence language learning?
Culture provides context. Understanding customs, humor, and traditions makes language more meaningful.
So learning a language is also learning a culture.
Exactly. It helps you connect with people on a deeper level.
How can learners immerse themselves culturally without traveling?
Watching cultural documentaries, reading about traditions, or cooking recipes from English speaking countries are fun ways.
I love that language through culture. Sophia, what about mistakes learners often make?
One big mistake is fearing errors too much, which stops practice. Another is focusing only on grammar and ignoring speaking.
How can learners overcome these?
Embrace mistakes as learning steps and balance grammar study with real communication.
Before we keep going, what's a daily habit you recommend?
Reading a short article or news piece in English every day.
Keeps vocabulary fresh and relevant.
Exactly, and it exposes you to current language use.
Finally, Sophia, what advice do you have for learners who feel stuck or frustrated?
Take a break if needed. Try new learning methods, and remind yourself of your progress. Everyone's journey is unique.
Wise words. Thank you again, Sophia. This has been such a valuable conversation for our listeners.
Thank you, Jacob. I'm excited for everyone to keep learning and growing with these ideas.
Sophia, before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or encouragement for our listeners who are on their English learning journey?
Absolutely, Jacob. Remember, language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. Celebrate small wins, stay curious, and don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. Every word you learn brings you closer to your goal.
That's inspiring. Persistence and positivity really make all the difference.
Definitely. And always enjoy the process, make it fun, connect with others, and keep exploring.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights today, Sophia. I'm sure our listeners will find this episode incredibly helpful.
It was my pleasure, Jacob. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to everyone tuning in to the English Hour. Keep practicing, keep pushing, and we'll see you in the next episode.